the future. How's it going, Johnny?
Oh, fantastic. It's the best Sunday I've had for a long time.
Oh, it was I can't believe how quickly that week the 60th minute of that game, everything felt so right in the world. We were looking like two straight comfortable wins,
Yeah.
things are feeling positive, and for it just to fall apart like that and to top it off with that press conference.
Hmm.
Oh my God. Where do we
Yeah.
even start?
It's funny because like the press conference has kind of eclipsed the game and the performance and how things sort of nosedived so badly after we went 2 goals clear, that you would be tempted to nearly not dive into the match too much. But it's just, I mean, I guess we've been there before. There's lots of comments I think that Conte has made yesterday in his press conference that are pretty justified, and I think he's right to be calling out the players to a certain degree. It's just, I guess, different supporters will have different views on how justified he is and the way he's done it, and also like interesting to see the reactions today, uh, including with some of the different journalists on what was his intention. I don't know how measured he was. He was obviously very emotional, but to what extent he was directing at Levy or the board, as well as the players who are very explicitly targeted by it. So yeah, it was a really disappointing game. I think we obviously we've seen these capitulations before, but the nature of it when you've got a 2 goal lead against the bottom club who have horrendous home record, who are not scoring goals, to give them the opportunity to get back into that game and not just like trust yourselves. We're looking to go third in the league for God's sake, and we're like sitting back and playing a low block against one of the worst teams in the league is absolutely mad, to be honest.
And when you're seeing players like Walcott score a goal after one game and 40 appearances at 34 years old, you know something's wrong. And it seems to be every week a player's scoring for the first time in a year, and it's always against Tottenham. And I don't believe this is Dr. Tottenham saves today and misfortune. This feels like a really poor defence and poor game management. I'm starting to think, has he lost most of that dressing room now? Are they literally looking at each game as, I don't want you managing us anymore, and we're not playing for you any longer?
I don't know. I suppose that like, none of us we'd only be speculating, but we kind of like we keep yo-yoing, don't we, on a weekly basis in these conversations that we have. We obviously had the two shocking exits from the two competitions. Everyone was feeling really low again, and then varying levels of ambition and hope after the Forest result. And here we are again. We've drawn. Okay, it feels much more like a defeat than a draw. But, it's weird because, like I said, we're going to go third if we just held on to that. So how can a team be third in the table? And I know we're not, but we should be. And how can we be in that situation and yet not have the players and management be on such different in such different places? Or I don't know. I it's really weird. Even like with the whole Kane situation, I don't know if there's been anything recently, but like anything we've seen or anything I'm aware of anyway, with regard to Kane and Conte, is like that he's sort of supports Conte and he'd like Conte to remain there because it shows ambition and everything. But like, I mean, Kane's obviously been lumped in with everybody else yesterday in the press conference. So one would think certainly the short answer to your question is that after yesterday, I can't imagine how any of the players would actually be looking forward to coming back into training and have much respect for Conte, because I think, as much as I do agree with some of the things he said, I think that the way he did it, and the location or the forum for which he chose to do that is completely unprofessional. And like, I understand not everyone will agree with that, but I just don't think that's how you treat your players. I think he's been paid a ridiculous amount of money, and I don't think that was a professional thing to do, even if it's got some benefits to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm mixed on it because I feel like the comments he made needed to be said, and we've had too many managers who have been too scared to stand up to the board and to certain players. And you do think that there has to be issues at all those levels now. Like he highlighted the squad multiple times and said they play for themselves. And I just wonder, are those core players that have been through these three managers. You know, I know we think Ben Davies has got a good attitude. I don't want to single him out. I don't want to single out Kane and Son. They all seem like good, level-headed people, and Lloris as well. But they're the core of our team, and they continuously don't show up for the big games when we need them to show up.
Yeah,
they're continuously silent in these moments where they're meant to be these figureheads of the club, and they're meant to be the ones who drag, you know, the more junior players over the line when they need to, and they're just not doing it. And
that's true.
Do we just need to cull them and start fresh? I'm not saying Kane, maybe he's the exception to that list, but is it time to say, Son, you've been a wonderful servant, but 30 years old. Ben Davies, you know, similar thing. Maybe we need a fresh dressing room as much as we need fresh legs on the pitch.
Yeah, it's a fair question. And even though, you know, you put the kibosh on us benefiting from Kane being included in that, shipping them out. I mean, not a phrase you use for Kane, obviously, but I remember seeing comments recently about like how Liverpool moved forward. They sold Luis Suarez and Stevie G left. And actually, it was when those guys left that they actually they were forced into a situation. They had patience with the manager, and they obviously achieved a lot of success. So I mean, who am I certainly to say, you know, that somebody who's an all-time great, maybe the greatest, up there with Greaves, Blanchflower, and all these other icons of Tottenham, like Harry Kane. Some bald little fella in Dublin having the audacity to question whether we'd be better off without him. But I think it's still I don't know why he should be necessarily, like you said, because of his performances in the games that have mattered. Like, there is still a question mark on him in those situations. As amazing a servant as he's been, and an incredible player he is to watch, and we're so blessed to be able, when we're really even older, in my case, to look back and say we were there for the 2-6-7, and we've seen him performing amazing shifts over the years. But yeah, I think we probably do have a sort of cultural problem with these leaders. I mean, my kids play hockey rather than football because it's not really a thing. Football's certainly not a school sport over in Ireland, and even remember like specific matches like cup finals when they're in first year, and they go down and like they rally together. Just talking about 12-year-old boys, and they sort of gather together in their huddle and after letting a goal in, and they charge themselves up again. I mean, you don't need to be the England record goal scorer, or is he? No, not quite yet. Is he? I don't know. Anyway, you know, you don't need to be somebody at that level, surely, to understand we need to motivate each other here. We need to dig in here. Tottenham just seem to have that frailty, and it does go back a very, very long time. I think there had been spells when we'd been a bit more resolute, and certainly much more organized defensively. But we had the personnel then. The personnel we have at the back now is awful. And like you said, like Højbjerg, people talk about Højbjerg when the year or two ago, when he comes in and he's got that Viking persona, and I think surely he's going to be somebody who grabs the game by the scruff of the neck and galvanizes everybody, and he doesn't either. Like, there are literally none of them. There are none of them that do it.
There's no leaders in that squad that I see. Like, no. I'm not taking out Harry because I think he's an exception to the old guard that I would keep out of all those old players, because he does always put the effort in, and he has never looked to cause any animosity inside that squad. Yeah. And you can criticize him to say you don't turn up in cup finals or whatever it is, but I think there's a bigger picture to that. You can't do it all on your own if the rest of the squad isn't performing and giving you any service at all.
But fair enough.
It just really feels like it needs gutting at the core, and not just in the team. Like, on this podcast, we've been quite probably leaning on it, but I think the more time goes on, the more we're starting to go, actually, maybe everyone has a good point here when you listen to them. If you I'm not saying the people who have a picture of Daniel Levy with a clown face on social media. I'm not talking about that. But there's lots of more rounded arguments coming out now of why it's time to move on from the owners that we've got.
Yeah.
Maybe it's fair to say they did a good job to get us to where they are, but they can't build this winning culture. You look at Real Madrid, a couple of that, and you go, their squad on paper is old. It's got issues. It's not that deep. Yet every time that you put them in a cup competition, they deliver and they show up when they need to. 34-year-old Benzema shows up every time because he's a winner. We need more players like that. We need that culture, but that comes from the board. It comes from the culture of the club. Certain players go to certain clubs and they go there because they want to be a part of that culture. And I just feel like we just got this loser culture of, it's a nice, comfortable place to go. You've got a decent wage. You're not expected to win the league, and you can use it as a stepping stone to go on to something more. So how on earth do we break away from that? And that's got to change at the board level. That's got to change at the player level. And that also has to change at the manager level. But I think unless you do all those three things at once, it just fails. We brought in the manager, but we didn't bring in enough of the players, and the board's still the same. So it's just still failing time after time again. And it's so boring now for us to have to keep going over in these loops for about 40 years.
It's true. And I suppose you have a much firmer grasp on facts and figures when it comes to finances and turnover and where the club's at from that regard. But just from the sort of ballpark communal garden analysis, you can see where we were when Enoch came in, and you can see where we are now. And like, it is, we are in a completely different situation in terms of where our infrastructure, how we are not a selling club, and where we're at consistently in terms of finishing positions in the league, the sorts of managers that are willing to come to Tottenham. There's light and day, or day and night, really, contrast on that side. So I think it's just wrong not to acknowledge that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, again, we're not actually in the situation itself, but a lot of the people who are very anti-Levy and Lewis are referred to like the F1 partnership, the Beyonce concerts, and all of that sort of stuff. And they use that as a stick to beat Enoch with. And I'm always thought, well, is that really very fair? Because if the revenue is coming in, it's not just interfering with the football, then isn't that a good thing that we're bringing that? But is it maybe a distraction? And is it maybe just sort of part of the whole, well, we are all about sort of now just consolidating this position in challenging for top four every season, like everybody used to criticize Arsenal for, and not actually going for the jugular and having a strategy that's going to elevate us to where a club with certainly with the facilities that we have and with some of the players that world class players we've had, should be actually not satisfied with that and should be bringing in, like you said, more of the players that have got experience. Like, I'm thinking back to that, say, when we got Edgar Davids back in the day, it's like, do you know, you've suddenly got players with winning experience. You kind of thought maybe Perisic would be a little bit more like that this season, but it's just like, I think there maybe there is something to it. Maybe there's just a bit of a lackadaisical, bit of an acceptance, a bit of just a lack of ruthlessness. Like we don't go for the jugular. When you're 3-1 up against Southampton, you think, okay, we now got a bit of daylight, so let's just sit back and
sit back against a team who's already got a terrible defense. Their two centre backs have gone off injured, and we go, no, let's sit back now. Let's try preserve the lead.
Yeah.
What is the thinking behind that? I can't comprehend it. But I agree with you. Just jumping back to that whole Enoch piece, I think where I'm getting fed up with them now is I get there's a massive benefit to investing in these other things, bringing in extra revenue so we can compete. And if you look at our finances now, we're in a position where we can have an average spend of about 120 million a year. And that's been about the case the last 2 seasons if the stadium's open and we're playing some form of European football with all these concepts. So that's a good thing. But they don't seem to put the amount of effort that they put into these extra ideas as they do into the recruitment and the thought structure around how to put things on the pitch. It seems to be that most of the focus is on how do we increase revenue, when what fans want to see is, cool, do all that on the side, but we want to see you as dedicated to that. imagine if the club put as much thought into creating a data-led recruitment process like Brighton. And I was speaking to a few season ticket holders this weekend at Brighton, and they were explaining that their ownership have employed people who worked in the gambling industry, because the gambling industry is obviously very data-driven.
Yeah.
And you can implement these software tools that effectively can help you scout the predictability of how good a player is going to be, how likely they are going to score. So your whole club's got the structure that's kind of not reliant on a manager or a certain player. It's just continuously churn success. Why can't we behave like that? We should be behaving like that, because we can't compete with City on a money level. We have to outcompete them in smarter ways, like the likes of Brighton are doing. And yet we just seem more focused on, like you said, getting an extra 10 million from gate receipts from concerts. And it is starting to get a bit thin, and they need to really sort out. They're running out of time now. That their anti-account movement is building quite significantly.
I remember having a chat with my eldest son whenever we sacked Mourinho, and I think it was actually when we appointed Conte after all the shenanigans that elapsed in the few months between. And he thought, okay, so we're basically going to try now with exactly the same sort of template that we didn't succeed with Mourinho, although in fairness, we've got that famous final where he wasn't given the opportunity to win. But that was a League Cup. And, I mean, any cup would be nice at this stage. However, we said to each other, like, okay, so he's gone for the same kind of manager again. What's going to be different? What's Conte gonna get that Mourinho didn't get in terms of support? And yeah, okay, we have spent a lot of money. We have given a certain level of backing. I think the defense is the obvious area where probably he hasn't got the players which he would have wanted. But there's been still this kind of fuzzy, vague, strange relationship with Paratici, who is obviously looking after the recruitment. And at the time when he came in, it was like, remember there was an interview with Paratici on the website, and it was all this going to be this open. He was kind of going to be the face, or the kind of interface between the ownership and the fans, and tell us what was going on. And that hasn't happened. I think
that's really dropped off.
So like that I thought, oh, brilliant. Now we're actually going to have a bit of an idea of where we're at. This guy's got a lot of pedigree. He's got a great record in Italy. He's obviously got massive contacts. And I think the recruitment has been, it's certainly been, I think, better thought through overall, although we've still got this kind of strange thing with club signings of Spence and Danjuma. That's a bit odd. But it's like, where, like you said, where are we at now? Because Conte he looks like he's going to be gone, right? He's gone at the end of the year anyway. I don't see how he can possibly take another game myself. But if somehow he does go to the end of the season, he's still going to be gone in the summer. So Conte's failed because you're not going to win anything. You might get us into top four. I don't think that's going to happen either. But where are we then? Conte didn't work. Mourinho didn't work. Nuno was obviously a total disaster. So what is the plan? Like, where are we going to go next?
Where's the philosophy? I feel like if you were to speak to a City fan, they would know what their club's philosophy is. If you spoke to an Arsenal fan, they know what their club philosophy is. Yeah. Chelsea, fine, they look all over the place in terms of their recruitment structure, but you know that their philosophy is buy really good, young, expensive players, get a coach in who's proven they can coach them, and don't sack them. Give them plenty of time and make the players know that manager is backed and there's nothing they can do about it. So once they've signed a long contract, they're in on it and they better get behind him or they're just going to sit on the bench. They've got, ours is like, we're flip-flopping between idea and idea. And what made us successful was that whole bringing in young players, nurturing them, growing them, and reaching a level. But what held us back was we weren't big enough or rich enough to hold on to them. So they reached a certain level and they would leave. And then we went, we've got some money now, not enough to compete with City, but let's go get Mourinho or Conte and try compete and do what they do. But because we can't outspend them, we'll get their leftovers and the players they didn't want. And then we don't have enough money to fix the whole squad in 2 seasons. So they're going to have to be really, and it just falls apart. Whereas what Arsenal have done, who have smaller revenues than us by 20 million a year, it's been much cleverer. They've gone, let's do the best of both. Let's get in a core of young players, build them up, and then each year just sprinkle it with an extra 50 to 100 million quid to add depth and improve that squad and add experience. And I think that's surely where we've got to go as a next step.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they're certainly reaping the benefits now. I think when you see it's just demoralizing, isn't it? Because I think with the Conte press conference, like it could have been almost Mourinho sitting there saying exactly the same things, and I just feel like it's really short-sighted. Okay, it's easy in hindsight to maybe say that, but is it not really short-sighted to think that we're going to get a different result with the same kind of appointment?
Absolutely.
And you know, the performances that was at the Belgrade, that with under Mourinho, we've seen those sorts of performances with Conte, and for him to admit yesterday, like he's saying that the players are worse this season than last season, which is true. Like, well, you're the guy
that's on Conte. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Fine, the recruitment hasn't matched his ambitions. I get that. That's on Enoch, that's on Paratici, whoever it is. We don't know for sure who's calling the shots. It's supposed to be Paratici, but it seems like Levy's still involved in some sense, whatever. But he has regressed very talented players. Kulusevski has gone from being the next pinnacle of Tottenham Hotspur, and the heir to Sonny, whoever it is, to just being, this bench player again. And Richarlison, no goals in 14 games. Well, he was scoring double figures in a relegation candidate side in Everton. Like that part of it is on the manager. It's completely broken at the moment. And I'm reading today, so it seems like some of the bookies have stopped taking bets on Conte being the next manager to leave. There's a meeting today. I saw Last Word on Spurs tweeted it about an hour ago that there's a meeting today to discuss whether Conte will be sacked tomorrow. Right. Okay. If he is sacked, all indications point that Mason will take over for the short term, but the goal is to recruit a long-term, young attacking manager.
Okay.
So it does seem like that we've gone right back to what we used to do and going back for those younger managers. That actually worked out really well for us. Pochettino being the prime example. And I think as fans, when you play this negative football, it's so hard to get over a rut about poor results and be patient. We need to be playing some exciting football to watch. I'm just so sick of seeing this low block with a poor defense. We saw it's just been turgid for the last 3 years.
No, I mean he's not improved the players, like you said. I think he's talking yesterday in the conference about just basically hanging them out to dry completely, and it was like the vast majority of his rant was aimed at them. But like he is supposed to coach them, he is supposed to improve them, he's supposed to make his instructions clear, he's supposed to manage the game and respond to what's happening, and he's supposed to be getting the best out of the players. But like there's never a plan B. He doesn't trust in youth. He's undermining his players publicly now. All this crap about club signings and everything else. I mean, like, we need to have a manager that, like, in the Pochettino mold. And it's interesting from what you're saying. So that very much implies that even though that's the conversation we've been spending a lot of our time on over the last couple of weeks in terms of the successor, that it may well be somebody other than Pochettino, which would be quite brave in some ways and show a little bit of imagination if they're going to do it properly and not piss around like they did in those 7 weeks before Nuno came in. I mean, that was absolutely shambolic.
I think that's what they're scared of happening, isn't it? They're scared of sacking Conte, bringing Mason in, and then scrambling around for a manager and looking desperate and just being rejected time after time again and ending up with the fifth choice once again. And that would just be a disaster. So, and that's a good time to mention. So obviously next Tuesday, we'll be recording with a football coach from Spain who's a mate of Johnny's. And we'll be going over all the managerial shortlist, manager by manager, what the team would look like under each of those managers to give everyone a bit of a feeling, because some of those people on that shortlist that I previously ruled out, having looked into them a bit deeper with people who really follow the game at a tactical level, it's been really interesting to see that some of them actually do make sense. The favorite one rising up the list quickly is Amorim from Sporting Lisbon. And I've got a feeling we could end up with him. But do you have a preference of where we go next? Is it firmly Poch for you or someone else?
I mean, I'm quite scared about the possibility of Pochettino coming back and all going like pear-shaped potentially quite quickly, because his legacy is, for most fans, just one that's so positive. And I know that's like being motivated through fear of failure is really not a good idea, and it's definitely not Tadare's to do. But I think at the same time, maybe Tadare's to do is actually to be a bit braver and recruit somebody who's not got a previous history with the club, that does have strong credentials, and is more associated with the kind of football that we are all desperate to see. So I guess I'd be very much in favor. If, like you said before when you talked about the vision, I mean, if they're going to come out now and appoint the Lisbon manager or somebody along those lines, like is there going to be some kind of statement at the same time where we get clarity on what the plan is now?
There has to be, like, for all of the things that are long-term fixes and can't be fixed tomorrow, they could improve the communication dramatically. And I think that's what you're saying. Just tell us, what are you thinking? What's the goal? Just tell the fans. You hear them. You understand the frustrations. You see that there's rising frustrations. You see that you've made mistakes. But I think we'd all be more forgiving if the board said, look, we went for these win now kind of approach because at the time we reached a level where we thought we needed a manager who knew the Champions League really well, was proven at winning titles, and they would take us to that next level. It hasn't worked. We're going to go back to what made Tottenham the club you all love, and we're going to invest in someone long term, and we're going to bring you back attacking football. Everyone would just go, thank you. You've given us a bit of an idea of a plan, and you're going to say in that thing, you're going to commit to consistent levels of spending, and people will be much more patient. But it's this radio silence is like the worst PR approach from the club at the moment, and I think absolutely painful.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things about Levy that certainly a really justified criticism over the years. Like anytime you do see him, he says he listens to the fans, and his whole persona is very cold anyway. But like I think he just doesn't really seem to acknowledge mistakes. He doesn't really show a culpability or accept what the errors that he's made especially in terms of these appointments and investment. I mean, I just feel that I think most fans would agree with you, would be patient. I think when you look at what's happened with Arsenal, of all of the clubs to be teaching us a lesson, like it's the last lot in the world you'd be wanting to be learning from. But I think we're like going to be mature, growing up about it, and ultimately we're all desperate to be now, crazily enough, in a situation where they are. It's funny. Scott, who's going to be on Tuesday, he made a wager with me a couple of years ago, and I was absolutely shocked by his naivety in saying that Arsenal would finish in the top 3 in the next 3 seasons. And this is the second season. And I'm like, I absolutely bit his hand off because I thought he was completely off his trolley. And he is not just going to win the bet. I'm not going to say how much it was because it's embarrassing. But I did similar.
My Gooner mates, I bit the hand off and said, I'll get 100 quid, start the season, we're going to finish above you. And I goaded them into it, and they were nervous about it. And I look like such an idiot now. Like, I offered them, can we cash out? Like 6 weeks ago, I was like, we'll cash out now at 50 quid. Yeah. No one's taking it. They want to rub my nose in it. And it's just frustrating seeing them be successful using the model that made us so successful before them.
Yeah.
And it feels like we just swapped places in our approach, and we've just gone completely downhill. We've got all this dead wood like they had. Remember when they had like Ozil and Aubameyang, wrong personalities rotting on the bench? They couldn't offload them. It dragged them back. We've got that now with Ndombele and Lo Celso sat out on loan, and we can't get rid of these guys because we've just gone for completely the wrong model. We just have to bring back the Tottenham DNA, which we loved, which is just go out there, play with a style, play with risk, and coach we so many good young players, many good young players that are just being wasted at the moment with Conte.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we take it. I think especially after the years we've been through, and it has been so turgid and so at odds with the identity of Tottenham's tradition, that you'll take like much lower finishes if we can see where we're building. I mean, I don't think we would be finishing that much further down anyway. If you, it's not like we're starting a low base or anything. There's still a lot of players there who are very, very good, and that's what was said before. Like we're not getting the best out of the players that we have, and with this manager. One other thing I wanted to mention, which could have brought up earlier when you asked about the players and if Conte's lost them. But I thought there was a post, I don't know if you saw it, from Romero on Instagram. And I was thinking, like, what Conte was saying in the press conference and talking about unacceptable, fair enough. But he's talking about desire. It's one of his favorite words is desire. And Cuti Romero is like probably the player, if you said who personifies desire in our squad, he'd be right up near the top of that list. And he's a World Cup winner. So, like, I'm sorry. And he was there. He's ever present in the Argentina team. He posted the picture yesterday and he wrote, "There are many things to improve, but we will not get tired of trying," which I think is already a pointed response to Conte. "We will get up and try again. I love the players of my team. I love them and my club. I know that we are going to move forward, and the time and work of all together will tell us where we will go. I've been here for a short time, but we're going to be together to achieve important things. More years will pass, but we'll try." So, like, he's making a commitment to the club. He's putting it on the line there, that where his allegiances are with his teammates. He's not accepting the criticism in terms of effort. Oh, you know, we all have our opinions on that, but I think I thought that was very interesting.
It's interesting. The one person he didn't mention there was the manager.
Yes, that's true.
That stands out so much. When you read that, I just thought he's basically said, my teammates are giving it their all.
Yeah.
I love the club and the club's giving it their all, but there's nothing. There's just a tumbleweed on the manager there. This just stinks of that phase of a manager cycle where, understandably, he's so frustrated with the situation. He's just lost his cool and he's blaming players, digging them out, and you rarely come back from that in this situation. I'd be amazed if in 24 hours he's still there.
Yeah, I would too. It's like everyone said, it's just self-preservation at the moment. I mean, whether he's consciously gone into that press conference and said, I am now going to hang my players out to dry and I'm just going to see how can I negotiate my exit from this club and preserve my reputation and minimize the damage that might have been caused to my brand or whatever. Like, he was very, very emotional. We all know whenever you're emotional, you sometimes say things you don't intend to, or you go further than you might have intended to. But at the end of the day, like it was self-serving and self-preserving, and his inability to take any responsibility or to blame everybody else is just like classic. We've seen a lot of it recently, and just think, it's a shame that that's how it's going to end, but it's almost inevitably the way it is. You know.
By the way, Pascal on the chat's calling you out, Johnny, saying you need to give us the. You need to give us the answer. How much are you going to lose to Scott?
I haven't told my wife, so I'm not telling Pascal. Yeah.
So it's a good chunk of money. So
yes.
Yeah. You make it back next year on the same bet, yeah?
I don't think so. It can't be all that long to St. Totteringham's Day. I'm just waiting for that. I have to make sure I spend that day off social media because it's been a few years.
Yeah. I watched them today, the Gooners, and I find myself I think I support 19 clubs in the Premier League this season because I basically support everyone who plays against Arsenal.
Yeah.
So I find myself watching all their games, absolutely obsessed. Every weekend is ruined because they're doing so well. And it has made the season feel 10 times worse than it needs to be. We always knew this Conte era was going to end in tears. Like we always said it. We said he'll get us back in top 4. But we know he's going to. But we didn't expect it to catastrophically implode. I think at this point, to the level it has, and for him to take the players backwards so early on, we thought we'd have a good season this year, and then he'd fuck up next season. So it's so painful watching them, and just all their players are loving it. The Emirates, for having the worst atmosphere in the league, is rocking now, and that goes to show how much the atmosphere is dependent on how and the type of football your team plays. Yeah. And credit to our away fans, if any of you are listening, because you bring an epic atmosphere. I don't know how you've done it for the last 4 years to every game, despite all this crap. Yeah. And I can completely see now from your perspective why you're chanting for change and why you're demanding for change. That's completely understandable for you if you're traveling every week to watch this crap. And then seeing them lot do all that and probably give you a lot of shit in your inner circles. Yeah. So
that's true.
Keep it. And as the boys in the Fighting Cock say, right, if you are someone who, I'm more on the fence with the kind of ownership thing. I think they've done a really good job to get us where they are, but it's time to move on, blah, blah, blah. But if you are someone who's staunchly want to change, go join those protests. join the away fans in these chants, join groups like Change for Tottenham, and really push your message out there, because otherwise just vocalizing yourself on Twitter, it's not going to make any change. And a lot of you actually have quite, really, really valid points that would empower those groups, because at the moment they're out in the stadiums with banners, but they're not clearly asking what they want to change. But a lot of you, I've seen, you do make really good points and have really valid suggestions. So help those people understand it. Get out this whole Levy and Levy out infighting as a fan group, but support those people if you believe in that. That's your thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. I think from a personal point of view, so although I'm not an away fan, I'm basically traveling like an away fan when I go to home games every league match coming over from Ireland, and the effort and the cost and the commitment that you've already made when you buy the season ticket, like, is I mean, it's there for everybody, no matter where you're living. But I know I've heard like people saying how you can protest, one of them being criticism being leveled at people who still turn up, and that the tickets or the seats are all sold out at all the games. Like I don't know like what is the most effective strategy at the moment. Like, I think there's various aspects that lots of supporters would get on board with, and like we've made a bunch of points today where we've been critical of the ownership and critical of the way things have been coordinated or not, as the case may be, over the years. But it's just, I don't know, like the way we are at the moment is like how do we articulate that, and how, like, we are such a divided set of fans.
Yeah,
it's a pity, because like we, at the end of the day, why are we even having these conversations? Because we love Spurs, because it means a ridiculous amount to us individually and as groups, and we care hugely and want the same results.
Yeah, it's a great shame, and you see it digressing into such low levels of I'm blaming foreign fans for a bad atmosphere, and it starts getting to that level. But I think we do need to come together, and we do need to say, like, what as a whole collective. So, and we're going to try get them on one of the future podcasts by the Change for Tottenham, but get to those kind of groups and say, here's what we think you could actually change. Like, here's what we think we could help you change and voice to the club. One key thing: better communication.
Yeah.
Day one. We want to know what the plan is. Just tell us what the fucking plan is. It's not that hard for you to tell us that. And if you don't have a plan, massive red flag.
Yeah.
No business should be that poorly run where you don't have a plan of what you're going to do over the next 3 years. And the next thing is, all these extra revenues you say are coming back into the club. Like, go into a bit more detail. And again, show us when those financial results come out. How much of that, percentage-wise, are you committing to the team? Prove to the fans that the majority of that income is coming back into the club. Prove to the fans and tell them what type of players are you after. Is it young players? Is it old players? Is it a mix, and why? Just these basic fucking things.
Yes.
Just turn things around for Ennick and make their lives so much easier. But they just prefer just to lock the door, shut themselves up upstairs, and just go quiet. And it's getting hard to defend them. And we've defended them a lot, but I'm running out of things to defend them with now.
And it's again not my area of expertise at all. But when you're looking at what the future lies, where the future lies for the club and the ownership, the alternatives, and there's the links with the Qataris and all of that, like, or outside, well, whether it's English based or whether it's American, or these are unknown quantities, and you don't know just because somebody's got a big pile of cash. Like, I mean, Joe Lewis is not exactly short of a few bob. So, like, just by virtue of having a different name over the door, are we suddenly going to be in a better place? We could be in a much worse place. So,
this is an argument I want to have a discussion with, and we're going to arrange this, by the way. So it is in motion. We're going to have a very big ENIC focused podcast coming up, and there's going to be people on both sides of the fence. And this is where I want to know, like, if we sell out, do you want us just to sell to anyone tomorrow? Because the links that we've had, aside from the Qatari group that we had some loose connection with, no one there seems to be at a level whereby they're going to start dropping hundreds of millions, have a clear recruitment process. They don't have any track record of great success with other sports teams. They've got some mediocre success. So we could very much find ourselves entering another 20-year cycle with an ownership that doesn't move us on. So we either work what we've got, or we as a fan base kind of just agree that that what the right owner would look like for us, because like you said, I don't want to be stuck in a 20-year cycle with another owner who just doesn't care. At least, the very least, Daniel Levy has some kind of affiliation with Tottenham. Whether you think he's a fan or not is your own opinion. But to completely move away from that to an American equity fund or something where it is 100% a profiteering mechanism for them to buy the football club, that is also a very risky strategy for us to move into. So we need to also, I think, align better as fans and stop squabbling over that and find out what we all want as a group, because it's a shame that we're all falling out over this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it really. I think that's all we could really say about it. It's as I said, Tuesday we're going to speak to Scotty, who's a friend of Johnny's, and he's a qualified coach, and he knows a lot of the managers we're linked with quite well. So he's going to take us through comparing Pochettino, Amorim, Celtic manager, and a couple of other De Zerbi. So we're going to go through all those managers. What would the team look like under each of those? And from a neutral's perspective outside the club, someone who just loves football and understands football, what's the right fit for Tottenham? Because interestingly, when you speak to people outside of Tottenham, a lot of them say you'd be mad to get Pochettino back. And I'm interested to have their view, because to us, he's just a logical decision. And then next week on from that, we're going to aim to have a proper ENIC debate and where we're going to take the club from here. So we're going to need your questions in that debate as well. So please engage with us on that and help us make a change. Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Well, cheers for joining, Johnny.
Yeah, no bother. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Any final comments from you? Anything you want to add?
No, I'm not going to divulge the money stake, and I would be willing to. No, I wouldn't. I was going to say I'd be willing to double or quits on Conte being out before Tuesday, but I'm probably in even more trouble with my better half if I said that. But yeah, no, I think he's going to be gone by Tuesday, and would be maybe a slightly different context in the conversation with Scott. But yeah, it's let's just hope. I suppose you said in a previous pod the only time you remember we're walking out of the lane and feeling kind of a positivity about a poor performance and a poor result was the 3-0 when you knew Nuno was going to be gone. And it isn't what any of us want, because I think, I don't know about you, but I think most Spurs fans would feel that we do have an affection for Conte still on some levels. Like, I really resent some of the things he said, but like we have had some great moments. He is a genuine person, very emotional person. He's got a lot of credibility. He's had some great moments in the sport. He was a great player, and it would have been wonderful to have had success with him, because I kind of felt like when I liked him being the face of Tottenham in some ways. I liked his passion. I liked when he was bigging us up and expressing his pride in the players and all the things you want to hear as a supporter.
But, you love I'm a serial winner and all that was, and Conte can when it first came out, it's a bit of a dead duck now, but when it first came out, that after having Nuno kind of just sat there motionless on the touchline, stood there in his white trainers, it was so refreshing to have that. And it's such a shame for it to all end so badly. I'd love it just to go, we were different fit, and we don't have some guy with a big media presence bashing the club to protect his own reputation. So let's hope it ends amicably. That'd be nice if it did. So,
and the dawn of a new era.
Yeah, dawn of a new era, indeed. Anyway, so up Spurs, and see you soon. Cheers, Johnny.
Cheers, mate.